What are you doing in here? I'm calling the cops.
We are talking about the 2018 horror thriller Isabelle. This one is directed by Robert Hayden and stars Amanda Crew, Adam Brody and Zoe Belkin. Now the story focuses on this married couple as they move into a new house. The woman is heavily pregnant and there seems to be this kind of kooky old lady living next door. Now the woman unexpectedly kind of goes into kind of labour pretty early, and sadly she loses the baby, and she is obviously, as you'd expect, massively depressed, almost suicidal, you might say. But it appears that the crusty neighbour may have this strange sort of daughter who appears to be just kind of constantly looking out the window of their house to this kind of woman who has just lost her baby, and it appears that she may have some type of malicious and even supernatural intent towards this grieving mother, so to speak. So what happens? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. Let's talk Isabelle, which is also known as The Wanting. So Robert Hayden, the director here, primarily known as a producer prior to this. There's a couple of directing credits, but you know, more or less a producer here. It makes for, like I've said, more of a thriller really than a horror, although the climax of this movie does go into kind of full-on horror mode, and it almost reminds me a little bit of the climax to The Conjuring Part 2. What works for this film, I've got to say that the setup and the premise here is fairly original. The actual threat that comes from a kind of a supernatural place is fairly unique, and so it gives it a kind of a certain flavour. Ultimately, when the mother sadly kind of miscarries very late in her pregnancy, she dies herself for a minute or so. This kind of gives her a kind of psychic supernatural connection, and possibly there may be something looking to kind of take advantage of that. But what actually the plan is, so to speak, and the intent is something, you know, you don't see so much. It's not a straight possession as such. It's a little bit more, almost more kind of malicious than that. So the actual idea here, I think, is pretty solid. There are some good performances actually in the movie as well. I have to say I really kind of like Adam Brody here. I thought he was pretty good as the kind of the father who doesn't really know what to do. Obviously he loves his wife, but he's becoming increasingly concerned about you know, what he should do. I mean, he thinks his wife's kind of going crazy, and she has had a previous kind of suicide attempt, so he's, you know, he thinks she's heading that way. And the movie actually has some commentary on suicide, and this is kind of, I feel, what this movie is trying to kind of like tell us as a kind of a message almost, is that looking out for signs of kind of suicide and dealing with people who may be, you know, feeling that way inclined. So it's almost like an anti-suicide message, you know, really sort of showing you that there is some stuff to live for, stuff like that. So it does have a kind of a, you know, a good message, and there are some fairly effective kind of like effects-driven scenes kind of towards the kind of the latter half of the movie as the kind of the threat is revealed, and it's actually a lot more kind of supernatural and kind of otherworldly than I was expecting. Certainly the first half of the movie, you know, you're not really kind of sure about what's going on. It's just kind of more of just someone's going to kind of going mad thing. But you know, there is genuinely a somewhat powerful kind of supernatural force here. What didn't work so well for me, I have to say, Amanda Crew, who plays the grieving mother who has just lost her baby, I have to say I felt she somewhat overacted in certain places, not throughout the whole movie. Before she had the baby, I actually thought she was pretty good performance. But when she's lost her baby and she's kind of going into these kind of like very depressive, you know, sort of states and kind of flying off the handle, it was a little bit OTT, I found, for my tastes. So I thought there was a little bit of overacting here on her part, and also the Zoe Belkin, who kind of plays the the daughter next door, the one who's seemingly in this wheelchair, again, just a little bit like overacting in places. And I put part that down to the director, so I was like, okay, Zoe, look really menacing. And it's just like, pulling faces and stuff like that. I think it's a little bit kind of like on the nose, shall we say. The actual direction itself is solid, but it's pedestrian. I don't think it's nothing kind of stands out here to me as particularly kind of a you know, any type of like individual style here. It's all very kind of workmanlike, but certainly not you know, bad in regards to kind of the directing here. I do think this movie just hits the nail on the head in regards to certain kind of horror cliches and kind of just kind of really kind of going through the numbers at certain kind of jump scares and kind of, you know, false outs and things like that. So I think the premise is fairly original, but I do feel as the story progresses, it just hits very familiar beats. So it becomes somewhat routine, despite the fact that the actual idea here does have a lot of originality. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I actually do think there's enough here to enjoy if you like a kind of a supernatural thriller. It's not particularly scary. It's not gory. It's fairly kind of tame in regards to stuff like that. But I think the idea here carries it a long way. And like I've said, there are some good elements here, and there's no real bad elements. It's just at the very worst, it's just kind of like workmanlike. So 6 out of 10 from me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.